Hello friends, and not yet friends, welcome back to Mary's Test Kitchen, where we're still on our tofu making series but meandering back to soy temporarily to see if we can't make it easier and more convenient by using frozen edamame, the immature version of soybeans. The thumbnail might be a spoiler, but is it worth it for you to try? You'll find out later, but I can tell you that this is the fastest tofu to make with the least prep. No overnight soaking necessary. This 500-gram bag, which is just over a pound, was $3.69 Canadian. Or it should be 500 grams because check out this discrepancy. Let this be a reminder that even though the label says a certain way, it doesn't mean that's what you're getting. It's always good to check, especially if the recipe you're making depends on accurate measurements. Good thing this one is fine either way. If you haven't tried these before, they are actually really great, simply steamed or blanched. Sprinkle some seasonings and you can have them as a snack or put them on your salad. Because they are high in protein and low in net carbs, they're pretty good for low carb and keto diets too. First thing is to turn the beans into milk by blending with water. Just a half batch at a time for me because my blender is not so big. Then strain. I'm using a nut milk bag as usual because of the fineness of the cloth to catch all the fiber, and I love this one because it's made strong enough to withstand the force we need to squeeze out the liquid. And squeeze I did. If you're appreciating my efforts with this series so far, please give this video a like, it really helps. Your thumbs up will give me the motivation to keep squeezing because I have to say, this was tougher to strain than making my regular soy milk, tougher than making fava bean milk, and also tougher than squeezing red lentil milk, which was pretty darn difficult. Those were all using raw rehydrated beans or lentils, but frozen edamame is sold already cooked. Like a lot of frozen vegetables, they are blanched before freezing so they can stay fresh and pretty. People sometimes ask me why I don't cook my soybeans before blending them for milk, and that's why. I find it a lot harder to strain than raw milk. I actually don't know if it's the fact that the edamame is cooked that makes it more difficult, or if raw edamame would be just as difficult. I haven't found raw edamame for sale, but I'm still on the lookout. Finally, after many curse words were muttered, we have an absolutely beautiful bright green milk and semi-frozen hands. In hindsight, it might have been good to use warm water to defrost the beans, but it is what it is. We also have plenty of pulp. You might notice though, it's a lot wetter than my previous pulps. I just couldn't get more out without hurtling something out the window. I'll save this for an upcoming video where I'll use all the different pulps from this tofu series. In the meantime, it's going in the freezer so it stays fresh until I get to it. Now for the second half. I'm blending for less time just to see if the squeezing can be easier, on my sanity. I've mentioned in previous videos it's a balance between getting the beans fine enough that we can extract the maximum amount of protein versus trying not to make it so fine that it's really hard to strain. At this point, it's a little less fine, you'll see it in the pulp later, but it was not easier to strain. As with my soy-free tofu milks, I left this milk to sit for 15 minutes to settle before pouring. I'm not expecting a starch layer as with those, but there may be some sludge left behind that got past the nut milk bag. And here it is. I don't want this interfering with the texture of my tofu, which we will make by heating this milk to a certain temperature and adding a coagulant to transform the milk into bean curds and whey. My coagulant of choice is gypsum, aka calcium sulfate, because it's cheap, easy for me to buy on Amazon or local beer and winemaking supply stores, whichever is more convenient when I run out, and it doesn't add any flavor to the tofu, like nigari or magnesium sulfate does. Lemon is another one I've used before, but the mineral coagulants tend to give a consistent result every time. I'm thinking of doing a video comparing all the coagulants, by the way, so please let me know if you're interested in that, because if lots of people want it, I'll push it to the top of the list. With that ready, I can turn up the heat and take this icy edamame milk past the soy milk coagulation point of 160 degrees Fahrenheit, all the way to 180 degrees Fahrenheit to give us a bit of a buffer when the coagulant is added and pulls the temperature down. Be sure to stir all the while so nothing burns at the bottom, as milks tend to do if you leave them still too long over the heat. When we get to the target temperature, Stir up the gypsum, which has settled while waiting. Also stir the milk at the same time, and then pour the coagulant in slowly. Soy milk coagulates around 160–165 degrees Fahrenheit, so I want to make sure the milk stays there. For me, that means leaving it on the stove with the heat off and the lid on for about 10 to 15 minutes. Depending on your ambient temperature, or if you're using a gas stove, you might leave the heat on super low to maintain the temperature. And afterwards, my friends, this does not look great. Ideally, when making tofu, you want big, billowy curds. Small little curds like this make tofu that doesn't hold together very well. Still, we press on. First scoop. Not bad. Second scoop. Disaster. We're gonna need another method. The old cheesecloth and mesh strainer will do the trick. You can see the whey draining through is clear and not milky in the least. That means the proteins have been successfully coagulated, and the liquid is not a waste either. You can use it in your veggie soups later instead of water to boost the savory flavor. You'll notice the stream has slowed down to a drip, and there's a lot of water still, so be patient. This is a great time to give yourself a pep talk and convince yourself that this was not a huge waste of time, and that you're not a complete and utter failure at this and life and all things. So when that strainer strains enough to give you the room, you can take the top, twist it, squeeze it a little bit, and then realize you're working too hard. Time to work smart and put this in your handy dandy tofu press. My favorite tofu press of all time comes in clutch yet again. Without worrying too much about how wet this all is, fold over the cloth to keep all the tiny curds in. Add the pressing lid with the spring in it, and twist the top knob to press down even more. Put this in the fridge overnight and think of the successes instead of what's sure to be a failure revealed tomorrow. My friends, I don't have tofu, it's a pancake. Still, I have to say, it's a beautiful color. Delicate. Extremely delicate. Oh. And what does it taste like? Like edamame. Like you chewed up the edamame bean and it's in your mouth, and for some reason it's not as fibery as some edamame you've had before, but it hasn't changed in either flavor or texture enough to justify the efforts of the day before. My friends, unless you're holding an exotic tofu tasting party, I don't see why you would ever make this edamame tofu. If you do hold an exotic tofu tasting party though, invite me, that sounds fun. But anyways, even though it's definitely not worth the effort or cost to make, it is delicious. But just like edamame is delicious, man, or woman in this case, has not improved on nature's bounty. Score 1 for nature, I guess. I just hope you enjoyed watching me suffer, and if you have any other requests for tofuification, please leave them in the comments below with the hashtag recipe request. And subscribe if you haven't already for more plant-based DIYs, hopefully less behind-the-scenes cursing, and what to do with all that pulp. Thanks so much for watching, my friends, especially to my channel members who help this channel continue to trudge along. And bye for now.